All right, so I'm really happy that you guys have figured out how to use the chat feature. We're going to be using it off and on today. So let's just go ahead and get started. All right, so my name is Becky, and I am an open water scuba instructor. But this is kind of what I do on this side. My real professional job is I'm actually a school teacher. So I teach at the American School here in Cairo. And I've been teaching now for, I think, 13 years. I teach physical education. I'm also a coach. So I've been working with kids for quite a long time. I started scuba diving in 2016. When I moved to Egypt, it was like a lifelong dream of mine that I finally went through and got certified. So I'm really happy to have done that. And it was like, I got hooked right away. I think I did my open water, and then the next weekend I went back and I got my advanced. And I stayed at advanced for a little bit, and then I did my rescue and then my dive master. And then in 2018, I started diving with Deco divers, and I started helping them out and doing some work on my weekends and holidays and stuff like that. And then last spring, I took the next step and I became a scuba instructor. So I've been, for the last year, on my weekends and holidays, certifying people in my community, my students, the parents, and stuff like that. I also founded an organization called Girls Get Strong that looks to empower girls in health, wellness, and athletics. So my passion for empowering women came relatively early on as a coach. So I've got a couple of pictures that are up here. Up here on the left are some of my athletes from when I taught at a low-income school in Las Vegas. And when I moved to Egypt and saw like how rich our community was with all of these resources, but so many of the challenges that my students faced in Las Vegas, I found that a lot of my students here in Egypt faced, that it was no longer a thing about socioeconomic status, that there must be more to it. So it kind of had me start looking more at gender. And so 5 years ago, I founded Girls Get Strong, and we host an annual conference to help empower girls, because it's not really known that girls drop out of sports, they drop out of athletics at a higher rate than boys. So there's quite a gender gap already at a young age for activity levels. So this is my passion, this is my baby, and I'm really excited to be here today to kind of merge all of these worlds together and to share a lot of the research that I've collected through my work with Girls Get Strong, through my experiences as a teacher, through my experiences as a coach, and through my experiences as a scuba instructor and a scuba diver. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about the barriers that prevent women from scuba diving. We're going to explore some of those differences between men and women and how that may alter their experience as a scuba diver. We're going to identify ways to support women in diving, and we're going to raise awareness to the gender gap in scuba diving. So for today's conduct, I see you guys have muted your microphones. You guys have turned your cameras off, which is great. It helps preserve our bandwidth so that hopefully everybody has a great connection. So we're going to be utilizing the chat. If you have a question, feel free to throw it into the chat. I'll be reading that as we go. And if you want to, if you have a question and you'd like to speak out, please do. You can raise your hand. And Sharky's running, he's the moderator today, so he'll unfreeze your camera and will allow you to ask these questions. So I want this to be interactive. I want us to talk. I have a lot I want to get through today, but I think most importantly, I want you guys to feel like you're engaged and that that we're talking, that we're having conversation. So please, let's get involved. Okay. So these are PADI statistics for for gender and scuba diving. So up top we have, in the purple, we have women, and at the bottom we have the men in blue. And for decades, like since the beginning of scuba diving, men have always outnumbered women in diving. So approximately 35% have been female, 65% have been male. And this is worldwide, so it doesn't just apply to Egypt. It's likely that these numbers are a little bit different in Egypt. It's also likely that these numbers are different for PADI pros. But there was no statistics that I could find to reference. So this is also in line with, like, when I look at Deco divers and like social media followings and stuff like that, that we're about 35% female and about 65% male. This is also in alignment with a lot of the research that we see on just general activity levels, that men tend to be more active than females. So there's no surprise in this. You know, what's the change? There's been a steady small increase in women diving. Some people think that this is from like the Me Too movement, that women are starting to empower each other. We're starting to see the development of women's only events where we're developing communities that support women. We're starting to see equipment providers that are developing scuba equipment that are designed for women's bodies. And you're also seeing the development of social networks like Girls That Scuba that create platforms to bring people together. So Rami asked a question, do you have the numbers for the instructors of both genders? No, and I would love to see them. So if anybody has them, I would absolutely love to see them. So I want to ask you guys, yes or no, do you guys think gender matters? Is it something that we need to care about? So you guys could just throw it in the chat as a simple yes or a no response. Julia says yes. Anybody else? There we go. Yeah, so I am in the same camp as I think that gender matters. And so it matters, but what does it matter if there are less female scuba divers? Like, why does that matter? So when we have less female divers, it changes the environment around us. It changes the way that we interact. It changes a lot of things for us. So when there are less female divers, there's already a global trend that women are less active than men. And scuba diving is a great lifelong physical activity that people can do. So we're depriving them, or we're not giving them an opportunity for them to engage in a physical activity that could help them lead a more healthy lifestyle. When it comes to communication within the group, so if you have a group together and there are more men than women, this can lead to unequal talking time, where, you know, it's kind of a joke that, you know, women talk a lot, and we do, but in the group dynamic, it can lead to, if there are more men, it could lead to actually the men having more talking time than the women. And they found that when they started studying the dynamics of groups and different types of groups where there was the ratio of men to women was not equal, they found that the women were more routinely interrupted while they were trying to express a thought or an idea. And they also found that they didn't have a strong influence, or as strong of an influence, over the group and what the group was trying to decide. So could you imagine if you were a woman and you were on a dive group and you were one of the few women and you were trying to create a dive profile, and you felt like you couldn't speak up, or you didn't feel comfortable to speak up, maybe you were interrupted, or you had limited input on what the dive profile was going to be. So there's a saying like, plan the dive, dive the plan. And so having a consensus on that plan is really important. And when there's an imbalance within the group, that can create problems that maybe a woman is pushed to do a dive that she's not comfortable with and she doesn't speak up, or maybe maybe she just doesn't feel engaged and so she feels disinterested and going away from that. And somebody just said, I love that Julia said something about inequality, and AI talked about equality. We're gonna get to equality, so it's coming. There's also stereotype threat. So this is a predicament in which people feel like they're being judged for a specific stereotype. And so there's a stereotype out there in some circles about being a girl, and that you're not as capable or you're not as strong. And if you feel like that stereotype is negative and you're in an environment where you feel like that's a negative thing, almost in every study that they've done, they found a negative, they found that it negatively impacted your performance. So if you feel like you're in an environment where you are not as good, or that it's a bad thing that you're a girl, your performance as a scuba diver can be affected. And that kind of sounds silly. Like, nobody's evaluating, nobody's judging you, but you're talking about being able to make decisions, being able to communicate effectively. These are all things that happen, that fall under the umbrella of performance. And so there's a possibility that these could be impacted within your scuba group. And I think we can all agree that if those things are happening, that's not necessarily a good thing. So let's use the chat from you guys. What do you think some of the barriers are for women in participating in scuba diving? See anybody using the chat? Barriers to participation. Did my network go out? Can you guys hear me? Okay. Yay, thank you, Nina. I was like, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, okay. So culture for sure. Timidity, self-preservation can definitely be intimidating to join a more male-dominated activity. Equal opportunity. Yeah, fear for sure. Henny, and I'm really glad that you're here today. So hopefully Henny said like fear for his wife, or that his wife has fears. And you know, there's a lot that you can do to help support her in scuba diving. So hopefully you get some good takeaways from our session today to take back from her. So sorry, it seems like there's a little bit of a delay between like what I'm talking in the chat. So that's why I was like, nobody was responding there for a minute. Yeah, and Hanny, that's all anybody can do is try. So that's all we're here to do. We're here to try. Yeah, so we've got plenty of barriers, and it seems like you guys are on a pretty good track for those. So when we look at barriers to participation, we kind of lump those into two categories. We have the environment in which we're in. So what are the cultural norms? Is it culturally accepted to scuba dive? You know, in India, not culturally accepted, like even less so, I would imagine, than here in Egypt for a female to scuba dive. And so as a result, you're seeing, you know, it was mentioned, less scuba instructors. So there's also access to like role models and stuff. And there's been a lot of research done, and women respond more positively to role models than men. So having and seeing somebody who is a scuba diver, somebody who's like an diver or something like that, that you relate in the same gender, has a much bigger impact on women than it does on men. And also there's an element of social interaction and what their friends are doing. Research shows that this social element has a bigger impact on it for women than it does for men. And there are also biological barriers for women for scuba diving. One of those is obviously like menstruation, and depending on your cultural beliefs, your cultural norms, how you manage scuba diving and menstruating can be vastly different. Dan's put out some great articles about the effects of scuba diving menstruation. And I personally, I feel like I need to say this, I personally have never missed a dive because I was menstruating, so it can be done, but there's some things that you should be aware of. And so if you're looking for information on that, I'm happy to share that with you individually, so just let me know. And there's also the barrier of pregnancy. So it's mostly accepted to not dive when you're pregnant, just because the risks of scuba diving on a fetus, it's not ethical to study. So we're not entirely 100% sure on what those effects are. So it's just a general rule. It's been decided, like, if you're pregnant, you should not scuba dive. So these are barriers that can set it up. And then even after women have children, there becomes more complications of, well, if I go diving, who's going to watch my children? Something else that is not on this list that I think that needs to be noted is the shape of a woman's body. So women have a different shape than men. And, you know, when you first start scuba diving, you go to the scuba shop and you get the rental equipment. And most of the rental equipment is, you know, standard, generic, bottom of the line that's been designed for men. And so it's going to have a different cut. And so women who are more curvy, women who are short, women who are really tall, anybody who has a body size that's kind of different than the norm is going to be given equipment that doesn't necessarily fit. And so they may feel awkward and uncomfortable with that. So these are some barriers to participation. And I've got a little video that we're gonna watch, hopefully, fingers crossed. Won't watch the whole thing, but I think we're gonna watch a minute of it.
Hi, Erin. Hi. Okay, so I'm gonna just give you some actions to do, and just do the first thing that comes to mind. Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl. Now throw like a girl. Aww.
Okay, so that's the social norms that we're trying to overcome. That when asked that question of, like, what does it look to do something like a girl, automatically we have a negative connotation. And that video is pretty cool. They asked the same question to, like, younger girls, and they had no idea. Like, their faces are like mean and intense, and they're like really getting into it. Also, something I can share with you if you want to see the whole video. So for a long time, in the world of, like, gender inequality, we were talking about this word equality, of treating everybody the same. That it was, you couldn't speak out and say, you know what, I'm different. And if you did, somehow that made you inferior. And so really what we need to be having a conversation about is equality, is giving everybody what they need to be successful. And in order to do that, we have to understand some of the differences between men and women, okay? So what are some ways that you think that we can support women in diving? And if you feel like you have a longer response than something you want to type, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll unmute you. We'll open it up for you to share with the group what you think. Wetsuits. Julia says wetsuits. What do you mean by that, Julia? Having wetsuits that fit women? Yeah, girl wetsuits, things that fit them, absolutely. So everyone can obtain the tools needed to succeed, and that's the choice that they make in order to succeed or not. I'm with you on this, Sammy. I was the girl that always spoke up. I think the guys here on the team will tell you, I'm not afraid to stand up and speak my mind. But there are some people out there and there are some women who just don't feel comfortable with that. So Julia said small boots. She has the smallest feet I think I've ever seen on anybody. And so, yeah, Sarah, I agree. Just having these opportunities for people to come together and to talk and discuss is really big. And Angela talked about advertising. Something that I've been really passionate about with Deco Divers is making sure that what we're putting out on social media balances both genders, that we're not overemphasizing male divers or female divers, that we have a broad representation of the people who dive with us, because we have a lot of women who dive with us. So getting a group of girls together to get it going. Yeah, absolutely. Those female networks are strong. I reached out to some of the girls that dive with us to help me with this presentation, and I was really overwhelmed with the responses that I got. Yeah, starting groups. Like, groups are a great way to start it. So I think kind of there's an idea out there that when you talk about women and you want to empower them in scuba diving, that we should paint everything pink, or come out with pink scuba suits, pink BCDs, pink fins, pink masks, like colors that appeal to women. And there are some women who, for them, that makes them feel like I'm a tough diver, that I'm going to do this, and that's great, but it doesn't apply to everyone. That if we stop sexual harassment of women, especially women when they're in their bikinis, inappropriate touching, that's promoting an environment in which women feel empowered. That we carry their equipment. Yeah, some women need their equipment carried, but you know what? So do some men. And this one kind of hits a nerve. Making skill exceptions during training if the skill is too difficult. Please do not pass a student along, or as a diver, like, you can do it, and make them feel confident that they can do it. Teach it in a way that really empowers them and helps them feel like they overcame that. And there's going to be some stories in a minute that you guys are going to see that speak to this. So yeah, Sammy, I agree with you that when you look at PADI's promo pack, there's a lot of women, and a lot of, not even just women, but they've got pictures of different races, of different genders and stuff like that, and it's really awesome. I wish people would take more advantage of that and use those. So what we know is, like, they're not ways to empower women. Like, these are adaptations we do for people that need them. But there's so much more that comes into empowering a female scuba diver. So, and we have to start with acknowledging that there are differences between men and women, and that's okay. That there are biological, brain-based differences, and this next slide comes from educational psychology, where they're looking at the different ways in which men and women learn. And these are 10-2. It doesn't mean that these apply to everyone, but when they conduct their studies, they're finding that there's enough people that fall into that category that they can speak on behalf of that. So when we're looking at sight, men and women see things differently. So on a dive, a man might be more attracted to a shark because it has motion, whereas a woman might be more engaged by looking at the reef. And again, 10-2 doesn't mean that it's always the case. I know that sometimes this can be a little bit like controversial. So, and it is, because I enjoy seeing a shark too, but I also like the description and the corals and all of that when I'm diving. So when we look at engagement and response, so even just the act of engagement engages two different parts of the nervous system for a man and a woman. So for men, it's the sympathetic nervous system, which means everything gets sped up, that your hormones get sped up, that your heart rate gets sped up. And that leads to like the fight or flight response when you're stressed out. So you're going to rise up to the challenge, and you're going to overcome this barrier, and you're going to like do the impossible feat that you never thought you could. So if you see something underwater that scares you, you're going to have the adrenaline and the hormones needed to swim as fast as you can to get out of that situation. So that for women, it's the parasympathetic nervous system. So everything slows down for them. their heart rate slows down, their hormone levels slow down. And so when they're under stress, they're going to fall into this idea of like tend and befriend. And so when they feel like they're in a situation that is dangerous or unsafe, they're going to group together with the people around them, and they're going to use that community to solve a problem. So if there's a problem underwater, they're more likely to gather rather than to swim away from it. When we look at processing, all right, so we're trying to make a decision and we've got to process what we're seeing with what we know. Men are going to look at it from an either or perspective, and women are going to look at it from an analytical and emotional response. I was talking to Gaurav today. We're kind of going over this presentation, and he shared a story with me where one of our female divers described a fish as like the grumpy fish that looked like it was like really upset. And he was like, I just looked at the fish and I just saw the fish's name, and I forgot what the fish was. So and that's just sometimes the way that women look at it. And then it comes to with choosing. So men tend to overestimate their abilities and women tend to underestimate their abilities. When you're diving and maybe you're doing a new challenging dive, men will be like, oh yeah, I got this. I'm jumping in the water, I got this. Like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. And women might be more timid. They might be more reserved. They might second guess whether they have the qualifications that are needed to do the dive. So, so we have some of those brain-based differences that can manifest themselves when women are diving. So something that women might need that men don't is, it's been labeled like the tap. So I have one of the girls that dives with us. She's been on like over a handful of diving safaris with us. And she's an advanced diver, and I was like, hey, why don't you think of rescue? Like, well, I kind of asked about it, and I was told that like my kick wasn't strong enough. And I was like, okay, I can understand maybe we need to do some work on your kick, but what she was really looking for is she was looking for a tap. She was looking for somebody to push her and encourage her to take that course, that, hey, you know what, like, yeah, let's do your course, but I want to do one session with you where we work on your kick to fix your kick. And so now, actually, when I talk to that person about doing the rescue course, I get some different reasons now why they can't do it. And I wonder if maybe we miss that. And if you've got somebody with you who's diving 5 or 6 safaris a year, I personally want to know that they can help prevent and respond to emergencies in water. And so I'd love to see her go and do her rescue course to help make herself more safe and to help make us more safe. So sometimes when women bring up ideas and women bring up thoughts, they're really looking for that validation. They're looking for a tap. They're looking for those words of encouragement that, hey, I need to be validated that you think I can do this. And this is not something that men need, because in general, men tend to overestimate their abilities. So this is a manifestation of women underestimating their abilities. So looking at this idea of empowerment and how do we empower women in scuba diving, this is my favorite part of the prison. I had a bunch of women send me some stories, and it's kind of awesome. So I'm excited to share some of these stories with you guys to see what made them feel empowered, or what made them feel inspired while they were diving. So during my rescue course, I was the only female student. My instructor did not give me easier tasks or change the requirements because I was the only girl. I felt equally challenged. I completed my advanced open water course last summer during a women's diving event. I was inspired by other women who were just starting to dive but were eager to learn, women who were more experienced and spoke so passionately about diving. I started following a female scuba diver in Saudi Arabia. She uses diving to empower women by helping them see their freedom and inspiring them to do something beautiful and different. Because she's in Saudi Arabia, it's like she's trying to take patriarchy all on her own, all on her own in the most unconventional way. It's amazing. I was empowered by a close friend who was more experienced diver than I. She was the only female during her course, which I found inspiring. She held herself with pride and spoke with such passion and inspired me to continue diving. I hope to reach the same level as her someday. One time at Brothers Island, an oceanic white tip came right at me. I stopped, took a vertical position, and used my fin as a block. While I was doing this, I felt something holding my tank, but was unable to look. When the shark left, I turned around and found 3 divers behind me, using me as a human shield. My best friend inspired me to start diving. She worked with BBC to create a beautiful documentary for diving and free diving here in Egypt that she recorded herself. She pushed me to get certified. During my open water course, we discovered there was a guitar shark under our moored boat. I was scared, but my instructor gave me the choice to decide if I wanted to see it. I decided to go. When we surfaced, I felt brave for overcoming my fear. I was inspired by my dive guide in the Similan Islands. She was the only female guide on the boat, was exuberant and joyful on every dive, and shared my excitement over all the box fishes. She made me think that diving is something that no matter how many times you can do it, it can still bring joy. During my certification dives, my friend and I had numerous moments of anxiety, and my instructor was always there providing a sense of calm and relief. The instructor's quality of care, acknowledgement of my fears and anxiety, and acting accordingly made me feel safer in the water. I think I got one more, bear with me. From a young age, my father inspired me to live every day and follow my dreams. My amazing advanced open water and rescue instructor made diving in the UK in 7 degrees with 0.5 meter of visibility fun. Robbie, you need to find a fun instructor. Later on, my course director inspired me to evolve and adapt my teaching techniques. I remained inspired by the courage and determination my students show daily. I have always been terrified of the deep blue sea, let alone the deep. Before my first night dive, another instructor told me night dives were her favorite, and she offered to join. Underwater, I felt so safe and confident. She was completely in her element as I followed her, like she owned the sea. Since then, I've been hooked on night diving and their magic. I completed my advanced open water course last summer during a women's diving event. I was inspired by other women who were just starting to dive but eager to learn, women who were more experienced and spoke so passionately about diving. So what types of themes are we drawing from that? People are talking about how they feel empowered and how they feel inspired. If you guys throw it on the chat, things that you guys anything that's sticking out to you in your head. If you want to speak out, unmute your microphone and go ahead and speak out. I'd love to hear from you guys. Yeah, definitely women feeling supported by other female divers. I couldn't believe that. Like when I asked people about this, the amount of responses I received about that. And it just validates the importance of having access to same gender role models. So encouragement and solidarity, definitely encouragement for sure. And that comes into that idea of not having to underestimate their abilities, feeling that their skill, they're being validated, encouraging to them, because it's not natural instinct to respond in that way. Oh no, my internet connection's unstable. A sense of community, yes. A sense of community, absolutely. You know, Girls That Scuba has had tremendous success because they've created an environment that brings people together. So solidarity, inspiration for sure. And what's crazy to me is if you go back to, let's see if I can get back there. If we go back to this story about the diver who was at Brothers Island, you know, they were an advanced open water diver at that time. They're not even a dive pro. And so in that moment, when they realized that there were 3 of them, and not all of them were women, 3 people behind them that trusted her, that felt confident that she would act and respond appropriately. And when they were unsure of themselves, she had no idea that she was a role model, but in that moment, she definitely was. She was somebody that they looked up to and that they felt inspired by. Julia, I love that. A safe place to ask questions and to feel validated. Absolutely. I remember when we did Angie's open water course, she had like 1,000,001 questions, and she kept apologizing over and over and over and over again. And by, answering her questions and helping her through that process, she felt more comfortable in the water. Amisha, you can't, like, holding each other's backs. Like, women, you got to hold each other's backs. Like, you got to support each other and not tear each other down. That's a huge, that's just a huge thing that we need to be doing in all elements of our life. And absolutely, there are other people out there, and you can overcome a lot. You can overcome these norms. So when we're talking about empowering, so I spend a lot of time talking to my students at school about empowerment through my work with Girls Get Strong. And the girls and I, my leadership team and I, we actually tried to figure out what it meant to empower somebody. And so we came up with 5, we call them our 5 pillars. And I think they're really important, and I wanted to share them with you guys. To empower somebody, you help give them confidence. Confidence in their skills, confidence in themselves. They have inspiration. They have access to role models or other people that they perceive that are better than them, that are more skilled, more advanced than them. And it makes a difference if they're a man or a woman. Having access to female role models is huge. Providing them with the knowledge. So, like, understand the theories of diving. That can definitely help them feel more, that can help empower them. Giving them leadership opportunities. Even if they're not a PADI pro or a pro, like, there's still opportunities that they can step up and they can be a leader, and you can ask them their thoughts and their opinions, and that just helps create, like, a more engaging community for them where they feel valid or they feel validated. And then also giving just general strength, like, you can do this, you got this, because that's not their first reaction to things. So I have one more thing. I have another video, so hopefully it works.
If we show emotion, we're called dramatic. If we dream of equal opportunity, we're delusional. When we're too good, there's something wrong with us. And if we get angry, we're hysterical or rational or just being crazy. But a woman running a marathon is crazy.
Officials tried to pull her off the course.
A woman boxing was crazy. A woman dunking, coaching an NBA team, landing the impossible, or winning 23 Grand Slams, having a baby, and then coming back for more. Crazy, 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 and crazy. So if they want to call you crazy, fine. Show them what crazy can do.
All right. I love that commercial. Or that was done by Nike. It's awesome. Makes me feel inspired. PADI has PADI Women's Day. So it's an event that's designed to support women in diving. I wish every day was PADI Women's Day, but it's not, and that's okay. So it's July 18th this year, and last year we started our first women's dive weekend for this event, and we're hoping that we can continue it this year, with COVID and stuff like that. We're not really sure, but we want to bring women together. We want you to feel supported. So we're going to be doing what we can to make something happen this summer along those lines. So I want to open it up to have you guys ask questions, anything that you guys want to discuss. Anybody has any stories they want to share, feel free to unmute your microphones, to turn on your cameras, and let's chat. Rami, I see you. you have a
So,
comment?
yeah, I have a question actually, or I don't know, like, especially in Egypt, I know so many female instructors, but only one Egyptian, and I barely know her. I know many Egyptian female divers, but not instructors, and that's why in the beginning I was asking about that. It's I definitely know it's the culture, but I don't know how to tackle that, and how can we do anything about that?
So my recommendation is to go back to the tap method, and to think about the women that you know in your diving community who you think have that are viewed as a role model. You know, are they ready to, and going back to like Sharky's presentation of like, how do you know if you're ready to go pro? So looking at those things, that circle of awareness, and you may have to see it in them before they see it in themselves. And so encouraging them and talking to them and helping them come to that point that, yeah, this is something that you can do, can be really powerful. And I think that's something that doesn't necessarily happen, that doesn't happen enough. And it's something that you as a male instructor can really be helpful with.
Yeah, good point.
Any other questions? Comments? All right.
Hi. I have a comment.
Sure.
How do we join your initiative about Girls Go Strong?
Girls Get Strong. So we're on Instagram, but you can, I'll send an email out with a bunch of like links and stuff, and I'll include that one for you. So we work mostly with school age kids, but it's
okay.
good. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. And we bring in people from the community and stuff like that, because access to role models is really important. So I'm always looking for people to get involved.
Okay, thanks.
So you guys had a lot going on in the chat, and let me see if I can go back. Sharky, if you can help me with this, I think that would be great, because I'm trying to figure out where I left off. Yeah, treating everyone, AI says treating everyone equally once they start is getting the women to come is difficult, because they're worried about judgment, especially when that environment is not set up to support women. If there's no access to role models, if you're the first one, of course it can be really, really challenging. And is this Hamzawi, the Hamzawi? Let's see what he has to say. So he said, do you think that is due to inequality in the opportunity in the sport, or is it down to personal interest? So I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I'm definitely not standing up here saying that everybody should be pushed to go scuba diving. Like, you should have the opportunities to pursue what interests you. And so what I was hoping for today is that people would walk away with a better idea of how to create a more favorable environment, or have a little bit, like, recognize that maybe some of the things that they're already doing are really great, and they already support women. I think my team does an awesome job when they're working with women in their courses. They do so many things to help support them that I don't think that they made those connections and they were intentionally doing it. That's just the type of person that they are. So I think hopefully after this presentation, they're a little bit more aware of some of those things, and they can increase the frequency in which they're doing them. So, and then you asked second question about what are the signs of inequality that I have witnessed. Well, you know, as a scuba instructor, and as a pro, and just even as a diver, I still get like people who come up to me and are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna carry your tank. No, I don't need you to carry my tank. Like, I can carry my tank. Or they'll tell me like, oh, it's okay, like, you're a woman, like, you don't have to do this, or you don't have to do that. And for me, it's just, I want to be treated as an equal. And I wouldn't necessarily say that's inequality, but that's bias based upon my gender, that because I'm a girl, I need that support. And that's not necessarily true. What I do know is that when, a lot of times I go on a diving trip, there's significantly less number of women than there are men. So I would say that is another factor with that.
Hi, Becky. I have a question.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this. I just wanted to know, when you teach students in Egypt, do you face any backlash from people who, don't think you should be teaching young women this?
I teach at an American school with a large percentage of our students that are here with their families from Western countries. And so I'm fortunate that we make it very clear that when a student enrolls in our school, that they have to follow our cultural norms, which a lot of them are in line with Western culture. So there's definitely, I'm mindful of the sensitivity needed to talk about this with different cultures present. But I think my school has been really supportive of me doing this work. So it's
right. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, you're welcome. Let me see. I'm trying to read all the questions. So, okay, I think I've gotten through most of them. If you guys have something you want to add, feel free, unmute yourself and speak up. Otherwise, I'm really thankful that you guys were able to join. Oh, Robbie's got a question. Let's hear it.
Last year, I had 4 girls becoming pro by me and only 1 guy. So I think it's a matter of cultural differences, because the Germans and Americans and English girls, they can do it as long as they want. Nobody cares about it, right?
Yeah.
And I think in Egypt, the most, I can't almost see any girls working in tourism. In our hotel, from 400, I think we have 4 girls, women working in our hotel. So yeah, this is why the quote is like that.
Yeah, absolutely. In Egypt, and their cultural norms are quite different. I mean, I grew up in an environment that if I said I wanted to do something, my parents were like, okay, let's make it happen.
We have a lot of girls instructors in my dive center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's all of these things that you're fighting against.
Yeah, we would be happy. We would take anybody, even with internship, everything, but there's nobody applying.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that tap is missed. That you have a small number of people who have the skills, confidence to do it in the first place, or maybe their confidence is borderline, and that opportunity to push them and boost them and rise them up is missed, especially when you don't realize that that's what needs to happen, that push needs to happen. So it's a really tough and really challenging situation.
Yes, but also you have to move to the sea and all of these other things,
Yeah. Yeah, I attended a fascinating webinar that was done by Susan Richardson, where she talked about it was the topic of is diving a man's sport still. And I was a little bit nervous about it, because I get a little bit nervous when we start talking about gender, because it can really jade people and turn them in the wrong direction. But she started talking about the imagery of diving and the sexualization of divers. And she had a whole history of how women have been sexualized. And we are at kind of the first point since the creation of scuba diving, that when you're looking at advertisements, when you're looking at magazines, that women are no longer being sexualized, that they're being portrayed in these medias in the same exact way that a male has been perceived. So that's going to have a really positive impact down the road. So, and I think with Egypt, you're seeing a lot of really positive things happen just in general with the fitness industry, that there's a lot of, it's becoming more acceptable for women to go to gyms, for women to run marathons, the Tri Factory, Pyro Runners, all of these guys are doing really awesome awesome work. And so you hope that that has a trickle down effect, and you start to see over time that these numbers start to increase. So
we have an instructor.
so we're at,
We have an instructor, she's 64. She's working since over 30 years in diving business.
Nice.
That must
That's
be
amazing.
interesting for this topic.
Yeah, I'd love to talk with her. So we're at 55 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. If you guys have individual questions, feel free to stay on and to chat. If I don't have your emails, I should have everyone's email. If you got the calendar invite, if you got the reminder email, then I have your email. But if you used the Zoom link on Facebook or used it on Instagram, please just drop it in the chat, your email, and I'll include you in my email tomorrow that I send out with everything. But I just want to say thank you guys for being a safe place for me to share something that I am so passionate about. And it was really awesome to see you guys engaged on the chat, and I look forward to hopefully having you dive with us soon as we can get back to the sea. So stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you guys soon.